Cardinal is obviously a very high position in the Catholic hierarchy, and he went on Fox Network and compared Charlie Kirk to St. Paul.
You're listening to Good Faith Weekly. I'm Mitch Randall.
And I'm Missy Randall.
We're here each week exploring the intersection of faith and culture.
We find people who stand up, speak out, and step forward
for inclusion, freedom, and justice for all.
It's time for Good Faith Weekly.
Brought to you by Good Faith Media. Welcome to Good Faith Weekly. On this episode, Missy and I are going to catch up. We're going to talk a little bit about Jimmy Kimmel's return to television this week. And then we're also going to take a moment and pause regarding the events that took place in Dallas, Texas this week. Then later on the pod, Missy and I sat down with Brad Onishi, who is the co-host of Straight White American Jesus podcast. And it is a fascinating conversation with Brad. We always learn something when he's on the pod. So stay tuned. It's a good pod. Hello there, Missy.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well, and you?
I'm good, but are you okay?
Why?
I mean, I have to say, as of this recording, the rumor mill in Oklahoma is all abuzz.
Oh, I know what you're about to say.
Or if you prefer, the prayer chains are a-going.
They are working overtime.
Because, you guys, as of this recording, rumor on the street is that your favorite state superintendent to take to court is going to be leaving his position.
That is the rumor circulating around the Sooner State.
Who are you going to sue now?
I don't know. I mean, it's going to be a sad day to see Ryan Walters leave the state of Oklahoma. But yes, you're absolutely right. News is starting to emerge. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but sources are saying that Ryan Walters is going to be stepping down as state superintendent here in Oklahoma, taking a position with, get this, a think tank.
Well, he is a thinker, that guy.
I mean, what may have doomed him was this week it was revealed that the Trump Bible started landing in classrooms, specifically to AP history teachers, by the way.
Well, that's a great place.
Which Ryan Walters was, by the way, when he was in the classroom.
You can't make it make sense.
But when they arrived, they discovered that, the Constitution, big deal that the Constitution was going to be included in the Bible.
As Jesus intended.
But Missy, there was something missing.
What?
The amendments.
The amendments?
So scrap the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Third Amendment, every amendment that is given us.
Say that again. Say it with me. Acetaminophen. Let's say it again. Amendment. Okay.
Yes, thank you. But yes, they weren't there. They were just gone.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, crazy.
Well, anyways, when this podcast drops or when anybody's listening to it, I'm assuming we will know one way or the other. So this is a little bit of old news, but as we are recording, this is pretty fresh. So I just want to check in on you, make sure you're all right.
Well, I am a little sad that I won't have anybody to sue here in the state of Oklahoma.
Oh, I bet they bring in somebody. I bet. I know it's hard to fall out of a ditch, but I bet they bring in somebody.
Yeah, my fear is it's going to be a hold my beer situation.
Exactly. And to be honest, the scary thing for me is just, where is he going that he's going to do more damage? And so that's, a little bit, I don't know. I'm a little bit nervous about it, but for today, that's the big news circulating around our state.
Well, I want to congratulate Superintendent Walters on his way out the door that he has risen our state to 50th in education.
Yeah, good job. We'll hang that plaque on the wall.
That's right.
But so in other national news, I feel like a weird sense of pride this week, as I feel like we were kind of a very small part of an effort to restore Jimmy Kimmel back to the air.
That's right. My $16.99 a month.
That's right. Even though, we don't regularly watch Jimmy Kimmel at all, but in solidarity, when he was taken off the air, you took a stand, got the approval in our family group chat to cancel Disney Plus and Hulu, whoever else Disney owns, probably everybody. I don't know. And I don't know. It's kind of a weird thought, because I know we all, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, we get mad at this person, we get mad at this business, and we're all going to boycott and boycott. And, it's kind of all, I feel like, talk for the most part. And this time I feel like, I know there were more layers to it because of the merger and the buyouts and the FCC and all this, but I do feel like the folks like us who did take a stand immediately and cancel, I feel like it made a difference. They said that the Disney site crashed because so many people were canceling. And I just thought, wow, I don't know, it made me feel good that I know there were folks on either side of the political spectrum who said, no, this isn't right, and made a statement. And I think that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, when you have to compliment Ted Cruz for his stance on the First Amendment.
Well, true.
I mean, it's a weird world we live in, but he did. He came out strong, and he does deserve accolades for that. And I appreciated Senator Cruz saying that.
Right. And so, yeah, we stayed up late, and watched the monologue like the rest of the country did to see what he said. And I thought he did a fantastic job.
I thought he struck the perfect chord. I mean, he was still strong in his stance on the First Amendment and decried especially the FCC chairman who brought this all about through his participation on a podcast. But he also was very emotional. I was surprised about the emotion of it, especially when he talked about the murder of Charlie Kirk and that in no way did he ever intend to make light of that situation. And really was a human moment for a comedian. And we forget a lot of times that even people like Charlie Kirk are human beings. They have families who are mourning the loss of that, but also comedians and entertainers are human beings as well. And that's the thing that's lost in this political diatribe that we find ourselves in these days, is the humanity of everything. And so it was a good reminder that there's a human side to this. And I thought Jimmy just did a perfect job in his monologue.
He really did. And it really reminded me of kind of the role of comedians within culture. And I remember Stephen Colbert talking about, feeling like his job, you have all this stuff, bad news and things that come out during the day. And at the end of the day, you're tired and you're looking for a way to make sense of it all and to process it all. And that's what comedians kind of do. They take all of the day's news and they just help bring some perspective and give you a moment to laugh and to reframe. And it's such a necessary part of our culture. Are they always 100% going to get it right? No. I mean, we've seen that happen time and time again. But at the end of the day, like Jimmy said last night, and like several others have said, we don't want to live in a country where this is not allowed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there was a surprising moment for me personally in his monologue. And that's when he brought up his own faith. And that he had, he follows the Christian tradition. And what I don't know why startled by this, but when Kimmel brings it up, when Stephen Colbert brings it up, and they talk about their faith, you forget that not only are they human, but in a lot of instances, they are people of faith. And that is an ethical standard, a spiritual guide for them as they maneuver their profession and their craft. And it was a really surprising moment, but really a nice moment as he tried to find commonality between him and those that he would disagree with.
Right. It seemed to be a very genuine human experience. And so we appreciated it. We're kind of, glad the way it worked out and interested to see kind of what the fallout is from it.
Right. So this week we had one of our favorite guests on the show.
I wouldn't say that. I would say...
Come on, I love Brad Onishi.
I love Brad. I hate to see him come in. I'm not going to lie.
You made that very clear at the beginning of this interview. But no, I always learn something when Brad is on the show. He is so insightful and wise and knowledgeable about everything that's going on. So our conversation this week is with Brad Onishi, who's the co-host along with Dan Miller of the best named podcast I think I've ever heard, Straight White America Jesus. So we're happy to bring this interview with Brad Onishi to you this week. But Missy, before we get started, we would be remiss if we did not mention the tragedy that happened in Dallas, Texas this week.
Yeah, so we got word shortly before we were recording this podcast about the shooting this morning at the Dallas ICE headquarters, in which, as of this time, we know one person has lost their life. 2 others are currently fighting for their lives. Aside from the tragedy of the loss of life, in this way, it hits a little closer to home because a lot of our colleagues spend time down there at the Dallas ICE headquarters on Monday mornings, advocating for, our immigrant neighbors and friends, and also protesting current policies. And so it's just it hit home, and it's been a difficult day, honestly, in thinking about these people who were detained for reasons we don't know, who didn't even get a chance at their due process, who didn't get a moment in court, or who didn't get to see their case through. And we just want to express a word of sympathy and support and care for their families, for their loved ones, and for all of those who are living in a state right now where they don't have security and they don't have freedom of movement in this country and are fearful every single day.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. So let's take a moment to remember those that we lost this week. And in just a moment, we'll be right back with our interview with Brad Onishi. We've got a lot going on at Good Faith Media in 2025. New logo, new website, new initiatives, and if you don't know, our new magazine. Good Faith Magazine includes Bible study and lessons. Our new lesson writers are Kathy and Nathan Maxwell, and they host a free, short, weekly podcast in support of their Bible study lessons. In the Good Faith Bible Study Podcast, and it's free. Learn more about the magazine, the lessons, the Maxwells, the podcast, and more at goodfaithmedia.org. Welcome back to Good Faith Weekly. On this episode, we've got one of our favorite returning guests. Brad Onishi is a social commentator, scholar, writer, teacher, coach, and co-host of the Straight White American Jesus podcast with Dan Miller. He's also a noted author. His last book was Preparing for War, The Extremist History of White Christian Nationalism and What Comes Next. I think we're discovering what comes next right now. But Brad, in any case, welcome back to Good Faith Weekly.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for the invite. And it's just always a pleasure to get to hang out with the two of you. So glad to be here.
Well, I wish I could say the same, because I wish I could say that I have been looking forward to this conversation, or that it was good to have you back. But Brad, in fact, it is not good to have you back. So
yeah, I get that a lot wherever I go. No one is excited to see me, which I try not to take personally.
Real hit at parties, aren't you? So, all right, now Brad, thank you for joining us. I really do enjoy listening to you and Dan when I can work up the courage to listen. I think you guys do such a great job of framing what's going on and helping us make sense of things when we're either too angry or too dejected to think straight. So with that, thank you for joining us to talk about a lot of things that are going on. And as Mitch and I were talking about before we came on this interview, there's so much noise out there. It's hard to distinguish what's noise from something we really need to pay attention to. So we're just going to hit some of these hot button topics and let you help us frame and make sense of things. So let's start with Charlie Kirk.
Okay.
Let's help us go through the consequences and the reactions following his murder. Have you been surprised by these reactions? And what do you think about the talk of his martyrdom and also the talk of censorship and whatnot related to his death?
Yeah, I haven't been surprised by anything we've seen. So I think that from my point of view, we're at a place where a couple things are clear. One of them is that the shooter is not somebody whose political identity or personal identity fits into the categories that would make him either a MAGA person who had done this or an anti-MAGA person, an anti-Trump person. It's just the details are not there on that. But nonetheless, what is clear is that the MAGA crowd is at war with those they believe perpetrated this murder, inspired this murder, are responsible for this murder, and so on. So even though this person has no direct ties to the Democratic Socialists of America or the Communist Party or a certain church or a certain university or a certain group, they don't care. Everything you heard at Charlie Kirk's memorial was, you have no idea what you've started. We are here to destroy you. We are here to annihilate you. And the army of people you see in the stadium are just the tip of the spear when it comes to those who've been inspired by the martyrdom of Charlie Kirk. I think, too, he has become a martyr and a saint. So I'll give you three pieces of evidence. One is Cardinal Dolan of the Catholic Church.
Which was
said on
remarkable what he said. I mean, just astounding. I could not believe my ears when I heard that.
I mean, I'm glad you said that, Mitch. I mean, did you almost fall off your chair? Because I couldn't believe we had a cardinal saying what he said.
I did.
All right, you're going to have to fill me in from somebody who has been hiding under the covers. Please share.
Well, Cardinal is obviously a very high position in the Catholic hierarchy, and he went on Fox network and compared Charlie Kirk to St. Paul.
Yeah.
Oh.
And said he's a modern day St. Paul.
Yeah, it was astonishing. I mean, just astonishing.
So
wow.
That's okay. So that's piece of evidence number one. Number two, Fox had a story that they went wide and far on social media where they said they spoke to the surgeon who worked on Charlie Kirk, and the bullet should have left his body, but it didn't. And because it didn't, it saved many lives. Because there's no refraction and so on, and therefore Charlie Kirk is a miracle worker. Like, how do you become a saint in the Catholic Church? You have to have been responsible for miracles.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the conspiracy theorists on TikTok and everywhere else are like, well, the bullet didn't leave his body because the bullet didn't come from where they said it come from, and so on. But the hagiography, the saint's biography now says no, it didn't leave his body because he is a miracle worker who was able to stop the bullet and save lives. So he's now compared to St. Paul, and he's worked a miracle. And then we had a representative say that if he were alive, he would have been the 13th disciple. Now, I think both of you know your Gospels pretty well. There were 12 apostles. There was a bunch of disciples. There was some switching in and out of disciples and so on and so forth. The whole point would be, it's not only biblically inaccurate, but it's also like, so Charlie Kirk would have been, I guess, on par with Peter and James in terms of following Jesus, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm just surprised. I've heard, a lot of talk about how the Republican Party had been so fractured, and that this has been really capitalized as a unifying moment, and that's, I guess, just gained steam and all those things you're saying right now. Just the mental gymnastics required, number one, to make this make sense in your head, it is just astonishing. Full 10 points. 10 points from this judge. You guys have done a great job.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is astounding to me, I mean, you just talked about the reaction, and we asked you about the reaction, but how quickly people just totally ignore, forget, but most likely ignore the actual rhetoric that Charlie Kirk used during his lifetime. Again, does not justify his murder whatsoever, but the guy did not have really good opinions of people of color, of minorities,
women.
I mean, he was not somebody that we should be upholding as this Christian witness. And here we have the MAGA crowd, trying to make him a martyr as well as a saint. And it's astounding how all of them just embraced it. And that's what's scary to me, I guess, Brad, is because either they're ignoring it for political gain, or they actually believe what Charlie was espousing.
I think two things can be true at once, Mitch.
That's true.
So I think they do think that I think they do believe what he was espousing. I think they believe that was the gospel. And I do think that, so let me make a comparison that is going to make everyone listening sort of say, hold on there, buddy. And I hope it makes sense. Okay. Martin Luther King Jr. is somebody that the American right would like to compare Charlie Kirk to. And they want to say, this is our Martin Luther King Jr. Right. We need a statue of him in the Capitol so that it's a counterpart to Martin Luther King. That has been floated. Here's where I think the comparison does make sense. And this is where you got to give me a minute before everybody hangs up and throws their phone and everything else.
I've got mine at the ready.
Okay. So when Martin Luther King Jr. becomes an American saint, when we have a Martin Luther King Jr. official holiday, the good thing about that is the universal recognition of Martin Luther King Jr. that for decades, up until recently, even conservative politicians could not say negative things about Martin Luther King Jr. without being outside the Overton window. That's changed, partly due to Charlie Kirk, but nonetheless, King became this American saint. Mm-hmm. The problem with that is when you're a saint, we don't tell your biography, we tell your hagiography. And your hagiography is all positive all the time.
Right.
Okay. Martin Luther King Jr. was a radical when it came to his critique of capitalism, mm-hmm. a radical in his critique of the rich, a radical for his standing up for the poor, a radical when it came to like systemic racism and the sin of the moderate liberal white. But most of that got covered over in place of I have a dream, right? Like once we got Martin Luther King Jr., the saint, the radical king was hard to bring to the surface.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same but different with Charlie Kirk. He's now an American MAGA saint.
Yeah.
So if you say something negative about him,
mm.
barbecue, Starbucks, podcast, whatever, what, you're glad he's dead? Nope, I'm not. Not at all. Right. This is terrible. I don't want this. Mm-hmm. This is bad. I have no joy. I have fear. I have hurt. Mm-hmm. I have anxiety. I have sadness. Well, you just said negative things about this guy. You must be a hater. And it's like, no. I'm just trying to say remember all those things he said about mm-hmm. black pilots and trans people. But that is gone, to your point, Mitch.
Yeah.
That's gone.
Yeah.
What's left is just Charlie the Saint, just as what's left of Martin Luther King Jr. is King the Saint and the Radical King, which is, I think you and I would agree, is a good part of King's work and legacy, right. is covered over. All of the bad parts of what we consider Charlie Kirk's legacy and history are gone too, because they've both been elevated to the same status, at least in the eyes of the MAGA right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned what's left. So just let's take a minute to talk about that. In the memorial, his widow went on to say that she's forgiven the shooter. That's what Charlie would do, and that Charlie wanted the best for his opponents. And then our president stood up and said something quite different. I hate my opponents. I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. So let's talk about what's left. And in light of those comments and what's left and what's around the corner, in light of what you just said, which makes so much sense, and in light of the president's comments.
I was, just because I've made such bad decisions in life, I spent a lot of time Sunday on Twitter watching Christian nationalists. That was a great way to spend my Sunday.
We appreciate your service.
Yeah.
Hats off to you, sir.
And so they saw Erica Kirk and Donald Trump's responses as perfect. Mm-hmm. There was no dissonance and no discord. Here's why. Most of the Christian nationalists who are just fully on board with Trump subscribe to this idea. In personal life, with friends and family members and church, siblings, you should turn the other cheek. Mm-hmm. You should forgive that person who trespasses against you. That is the church setting. That's the kingdom of God. Yeah. The civil kingdom, completely different kingdom. Yeah. And if in the civil kingdom, according to a two kingdoms theology of Calvin and certain reformers, the magistrate, the prince, the ruler, they need to execute justice. So when the wife says, I forgive him, but the magistrate, ruler, president says, I hate my opponents, it's like chef's kiss. They're over the moon because they're like, yes, personal forgiveness. But when it comes to the public sphere and American politics, we need vengeance, we need hatred, and we need to move quickly to destroy our enemies. And those are the kinds of dichotomies they operate in.
I'm feeling some sort of really twisted sermon illustration here about Caesar and the coin.
You give what to Caesar's is Caesar's, and what is Caesar's.
Yeah, what you're saying, Brad, is they actually do believe in separation of church and state.
You know what? So this is, you know what?
Wow.
Don't get me started.
You just stumbled into something.
I did.
What they'll say is, so they will give you that, Mitch. They're like, oh, we do believe in separation of church and state. So the church should not control the civil sphere.
Right.
The civil kingdom belongs to a different sphere. Mm-hmm. But the civil kingdom should always be ruled by God's enforcers, who will make sure that in public, the right religion is taught and the right religion is enforced according to the civil laws of your community, state, country. So it's not that we want the priest or the pastor in charge of the country or the state. separation of church and state. I mean, sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that the only person who has the right to lead politically is a Christian who will create laws that guide human beings towards obedience. So, like, can I force you to accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior? No, but can I create laws that outlaw the public celebration of any other religion? Yes. Can I make laws that make it so you can't open a business on Sundays? Yes. Can I make laws that outlaw pornography and alcohol? Yes. So as a ruler, you should do that even though you're not a churchman. And that's the distinction.
Yeah.
It'd be real helpful right now if I could take Tylenol, but I hear we can't do that anymore. So
Oh my gosh. Well, you've been holding on to that one. That was good.
I'll probably say it again here in a minute. Sorry. Carry on. You go on.
All right. Well, Brad, let's move on to immigration. And, we haven't talked to you in a while. And since Trump has taken office a second time, obviously they have ramped up their attacks on Hispanic communities all across the country. ICE has been using tactics that, have not been seen for decades, not only in this country, but globally. So tell us about kind of your reaction to what is going on with the rounding up of immigrants, both undocumented and documented, and how terrified should we be? Because what I could not believe, the Supreme Court, in their hypocrisy, said that ICE can use race as as an issue to detain and question, but colleges can't. So make it make sense, Brad.
Yeah. So the Supreme Court ruling that you're referencing basically says that if you are an ICE agent, you can profile people on the basis of language and appearance. So if I am an ICE agent and I happen to come across folks who appear to me as Latino, or they are speaking Spanish, I'm allowed by law, apparently, to walk up and say, "Hey, who are you? Can I see your papers? What's your status? What's this? What's that?" What this, in essence, does is create a situation where if you are brown, if you are speaking a language that's not English, someone may just approach you and say, "Show me your papers." We live in a show me your papers state.
Brad, I now carry my passport everywhere I go. I'm Native American, I've got dark skin, and I just don't want to take a chance. So I carry my papers everywhere I go now.
And I think there's a lot of I think LA was really the kind of focus for on this for a long time. And I think that, what people around the country probably don't understand. I know that y'all have people in LA that are close to you and you might talk to, but if you're not there, you may not understand that just to try to go to work or school in a place like LA County, which has tens of millions of people who are Latino, much less people of color, felt like terrifying. Like, I don't know that I can even do this, even though I'm a US citizen, even though I'm a green card holder, much less somebody who is undocumented. So I think that's number one. I think the other thing that we just have to be aware of, and it's really hard for people to keep up on the news, and I don't blame them, and I know this stuff is hard, but Alligator Alcatraz, the concentration camp, was created in Florida and then dismantled. We have reports now that say that since they closed that facility, 1,800 people who were in detention there are just gone.
We don't know
Like, we don't have, there's no ICE record of them. Their family members can't find them. So we had a situation where people were cheering because, like, the concentration camp was closed. It was deemed, it wasn't allowed to stay open for numerous reasons. So what seems to have happened as the whole country paid attention to the Charlie Kirk stuff and the Jimmy Kimmel stuff and so on was 1,800 people who were there are just, we don't know where they are. We just seem to have a government that disappears people now. It could be people who were sent to El Salvador. It could be people sent to Sudan or South Sudan. It could be people who we have no idea where they are. Or it could just be that they're blowing boats up in the Caribbean because they're claiming those boats are transporting fentanyl. I think that the point is you have neighbors who feel like their existence is not one that is viable in this country anymore, regardless of who you are listening to this. Number two, even if you think you're safe now, I think that we all have to admit that whatever identity you have in this country, there's going to come a point when the arrest of American citizens on the grounds of being a threat, a terrorist, a something is just not, it's not out of the realm of imagination, and it's really honestly not far
Well,
away.
just this week, the president, declared that Antifa is a domestic terrorist
Yeah.
organization. So
Yeah.
if they could tie anybody to Antifa, then they can detain and arrest. It's just, I mean, here we go.
What's Antifa? There's no
Right.
Antifa membership card.
Exactly.
There's no like email. I mean, Antifa is this sort of loose something that flies around more on the right than it does anywhere else. And the reason I think they did that, Mitch, is to say, well, it's nebulous enough that if we just claim that you are an Antifa
Exactly.
terrorist, we know the playbook. We remember Guantanamo Bay from George W. Bush. Well, we can do that kind of stuff again. That's easy. And instead of being somebody who we claim is a Muslim terrorist, as it was 20 years ago, we'll just claim that it's anybody who's an Antifa terrorist,
Right.
regardless of what they look like, what religion they practice, who they are.
Yeah. Okay, well, in association with immigration, Trump has decided to utilize the National Guard like no other president has ever used a National Guard. So, sending the Guard into Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., now Memphis, Tennessee, not to mention the threats of other cities across the country. So, what is your take on the actual use of the Guard in these capacities, and where do you think he's actually going with this strategy?
Well, so I'll give you my take, and then I'll tell you where I think he's going. My take is that that Trumpism is a lost cause.
Hmm.
So the lost cause theology of this Confederacy said the South will rise again. The South was attacked by the North because of its Christian virtue and superior society. So the North, it was not about slavery. It was about money and land and greed and avarice on the part of the North. That's the lost cause.
Yeah.
I have maintained for a long time that Trumpism is a lost cause, that the big lie was a lost cause. Oh, we didn't lose the election, you took it,
Mm,
right? We didn't lose the country, you took it from us. We're the victims of theft because it's our country by right, and you all, the woke, immigrant, non-Christian, whoever's have taken it from us. So the big lie, lost cause,
mhm.
right? It was a myth with no historical backing that motivated tens of millions of people in the country. Now that he's back in power, instead of having the Confederacy secede from the Union, we're seeing MAGA Nation invade the Union, right? So it's Trumpism is a lost cause, but they're not seceding from the Union, they're invading it,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So they're going to send the troops. They're going to dismantle public health and vaccines and Tylenol and tell you lies about autism. They're going to do all of that to invade your life and your public square. Okay. So
Mhm.
my take is when you send troops to these quote unquote blue cities, other than Memphis, well, Memphis is a blue city, but we send them to blue states or blue places, you're invading.
Right.
You're saying we don't care about the local elections, the local leaders, the local people. Stephen Miller said all these people, these 90-year-old hippies in DC, they can go back. They don't live here and they don't count, right? What did Bovino, the head of DHS, say to reporters one day? He said, we're here to make LA safer because the politicians here won't. Well, that's not democracy. That's fascism.
Mhm.
People of LA elected people. The people of California elected people. They are enacting the policies that supposedly, hopefully, they were elected to enact. The military says, well, they won't do it, so we will. That's not democracy. That's fascism.
Yeah.
That's what they want. They want. Now, where are they going? What does this invasion lead to? It leads to martial law, suspending elections, and basically a kind of right-wing machine that rules the country permanently. I know a lot of folks are banking on 2026 as a time when we retake those who are not MAGA, the House and the Senate and anything else. It's a long way to there. And I'm just wondering, like, what are they going to do before we get there?
Mhm.
How many National Guard troops, how many ICE agents are at the polls in Baltimore, in Philly, in Detroit, in LA, in San Francisco and San Diego, in Atlanta? How many people are you seeing scared to leave their homes to vote? Where are elections suspended because it's just not safe and there's too much unrest? That's where it's going. Because if you can do that, if you can claim that the murder of Charlie Kirk leads to Antifa as terrorist organizations, and then you see terrorist organizations are making it so it's too chaotic and unlawful and disordered for us to vote, by the time we get to November 2026, we are going to be 25 paces past where we are today in terms of our norms and virtues being trampled on. And so that's what they're going for. It's now normal, right?
Right.
I mean, National Guards in DC, it's just normal now. It's just there. I mean, life goes on, the country goes on. I know people in DC haven't moved on, but the news is not watching LA or DC anymore, right? And I've lived in Memphis. I know the country doesn't care about Memphis. I've lived in Memphis.
Yeah.
I know the country's forgotten about Memphis a long time ago. And not to mention, let's just tie it all together. Sorry, you got me on a roll now. You ready? Okay. That happens to be the place Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated.
Exactly. Yeah.
Memphis, Tennessee. So
yeah,
we can tie that back to what we talked about at the start.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, forget the Tylenol. I need something stronger.
I need something else now.
Yeah. But that's next on the list to talk about is RFK Jr.'s attempt to reinvent healthcare in this country and what the implications of this are going to be. As he most recently, said, acetaminophen is causing autism, and as we've joked about.
You did a lot better pronouncing that than Trump did in the Oval.
Hey, I can even go vitamin to Vegemin. You want to do that? Brad, are you even old enough for that reference? I don't know.
I am not.
Anyways, but we jest about that, but it's not a joke, and people do take this stuff seriously. So do you feel like enough of this rhetoric and enough of this untrue, unscientific information is going to permeate and cause drastic changes in our healthcare system?
I do, and I think we've already seen that. I think we've already. So let's just say, what's the primary piece of data? Florida will no longer require vaccinations as part of attending public schools. Now, Florida's a big state. I mean, Florida's got a huge population. That is a big deal. And that changes the whole calculus of like what it means to send a kid to school in that state. So yes, it already has. And I think what we've learned over the last decade is that Texas and Florida are the labs, right? If it works in one of those, then like Tennessee's going to give it a shot, right? Oklahoma's going to give it a shot. Other places are going to give it a go. And Florida's sort of the pioneer here. So I think the short answer is yes. I think to go deeper on this, one of the reasons why is that there's two things. I think one, RFK Jr. represents the revenge of authority on all those people who did not want science and data to be the authorities in their life. And I think all of us know enough religious people who have spoken this way, that science is the enemy. Science is not the authority. God is the authority. The Bible is the authority, not science. So is RFK fit really well in that religious identity? No. But like, you can't tell me people aren't excited that someone's like, screw you, science. We're going to do it this way. We know how to do it. We don't need you. We're not going to listen to you, Fauci. We're not going to listen to the CDC, the FDA. All of that's done. Take that. Give me God. Give me common sense. Give me scripture. Give me all those things. So I think that's there. I also think that on the flip side of this, RFK is a eugenicist who does not believe that those with certain disabilities, certain divergences, certain bodily manifestations. Like, I'm a neurodivergent person. I think he thinks that people don't, if you can't survive, then you can't survive. It's a survival of the fittest thing. And I just want to remind everybody that throughout the 20th century, there was like very few times atheists and white evangelicals got along. It was a pretty contentious relationship. They were able to get along when it came to eugenics. A lot of white evangelicals loved eugenics, and atheists too. They were able to shake hands. James Dobson's mentor was Paul Popenoe, the most influential eugenicist of the 20th century. So the idea that like, if you don't survive because you're just too weak and different and you're just too something, and that white people should have more babies and the white race is superior anyway, right? We can all see where this goes. Like, we all kind of know, like, And I think RFK represents that too. And I think that has settled into many corners of the American right, and it will continue to.
Well, now you've taught me that they believe in church separation of church and state and Darwinism at the same time. I mean, come on.
It's not Darwin. So it's not Darwin, but it's like the one place 20th century evangelicals and atheists could shake hands and say, I'm with you, was eugenics.
Eugenics, yeah.
And that's bad news for everybody.
Absolutely.
So, all right, you talked about earlier in talking about the concentration camp that was in Florida and how all these people disappeared. And you made mention of something that I wanted to ask anyways, but you said we've got all this noise about Kimmel, about Kirk, and about all these things going on. In the meantime, those things are happening. My problem is I understand a lot of it's noise. A lot of it's the 2-year-old running through the playroom, knocking down everybody's towers just as a distraction. At the same time, those distractions have implications as well. How do we separate this? How do we make sense of it and move on and make differences and make impacts when those things of 1,800 people disappearing, that is huge and attention needs to be paid to it.
Yep.
But also the implications of the noise, what I would call the noise, it's also important. So what are we to do?
I don't want anyone listening to think that I believe that like the Jimmy Kimmel thing was a distraction. So that hit me hard. Right. And it's not because I love Jimmy Kimmel. I don't watch late night TV. I have young children. I go to bed way early. I get up get up early. It's terrible. So I don't watch Jimmy Kimmel. I don't watch Seth Meyers. I don't watch any of that business. But Chris Hayes said it perfectly. The countries where the late night comedians cannot criticize the leader are not the countries you usually want to live in.
Right.
So it is a big deal.
Yeah,
it is. So are the 1,800 people we can't find from the concentration camp in Florida is a really, 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 really magnanimously big deal. I think the answer right now is that we all have to find our local and personal issues and stand for those as much as we can. So like Missy, you've been just expressing over and over again in this conversation, like, how hard it is to like delve into all this stuff. And I think the answer is not that we all should be omnipresent and omniscient about all of the fires. It's where can I contribute? That's the first question. Where can I contribute? Can I contribute to protecting my neighbors from being kidnapped by ICE? Can I contribute, right, by paying attention to media and freedom of speech and somehow making a difference there? Like, do I happen to be a Disney adult who like wants to get on my Facebook and tell 15,000 people that they should cancel their Disney cruise because as Disney adults, we can't do this. If that's you, then do it, right? Are you somebody who can get involved in like local stuff? The thing the other side figured out a long time ago is that the national is the local and the local is the national. The answer is for everyone to find 1, 2, or 3 places they're going to resist and work with others to resist. Immigration, healthcare, reproduction, reproductive rights, education, so on and so forth. Where are you going to resist with others? So one of the things that most people around the country are not aware of is the just agile, adaptive, and ferocious local resistance to ICE in LA. There are rapid response teams. There are people on TextChange and Signal chats. There are people with protocol who know the rights and they show up as soon as there's a sign of ICE in their neighborhood. There's people being alerted and they know, right, systematically the tactics to put in place. Okay. And in many ways, you can see ICE being highly unsuccessful in LA over the last months because of that. One report said that there are the same amount of ICE agents in LA today as there were pre-Trump. And that a lot of that is it just got to be too hard. If Stephen Miller says we have to arrest 3,000 people a day and detain them, these people in LA are making it too hard to meet that quota. We should probably go somewhere else. Local resistance on 1 or 2 things you can contribute to. What are the things that you can get involved in? You do not need to know everything about all of it. You can't. Your mental health can't take it. You don't have enough time. You don't have enough capacity. And I've been where you are, Missy, so many times of like, I just want to get under the covers. I want to eat French fries. I want to watch old movies and just not do this today. And a lot of times I get there is when I'm trying to hold all of it at once. who are, and the, and you all have heard me say this before, but I'll just say it again, is like, when you actually go do things with others, when you go take part in a rapid response team or a protest or a group that is actually standing up for those who've been disappeared, you feel better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You just feel better. Being with others feels better.
Yeah. And what we're discovering too, I mean, there's so many organizations that are countering and combating this rise of fascism all across the country. I'm part of a lawsuit here with a group of educators and clergy who are standing up against our state superintendent who's trying to impose, just some draconian type of policies on our public education. We've got other organizations like Democracy Forward out of Washington, D.C., Skye Perryman, who's on Good Faith Media Board. She's fighting in court and winning against the Trump administration. And so there are some really good bright spots across the country, as you just mentioned, of people standing up and standing in the gap against what we're experiencing here. So that does give me hope. So as dark and depressing as Missy may think this conversation might be, there's some good things happening, and we have to cling to those and keep fighting. So, well, Brad, it's always entertaining, educational.
Don't finish the sentence. Don't finish it. Just say.
Thanks for being with us this week.
That's fine.
We appreciate it. But hey, before we let you go, it's coming. We've got one last question to ask you, and Missy has the honor of asking it.
So, Brad, as you know, our tagline at Good Faith Media is "There's more to tell." So, in light of your work and our conversation today, what is your more to tell?
So I have the privilege of leading a podcast network called Access Mundi Media, and our whole reason for existing is to bring public scholarship to everyday people. We want to connect the ivory tower to the grassroots, and we work with professors to put their work into engaging podcasts that people can listen to on the drive into work, doing the dishes, walking the dog. In October, we have two things coming that I really think need to be said. One is a series by Matthew Taylor, who is author of Violent Take It by Force and creator of Charismatic Revival Fury, and his podcast partner, Susie Hayward, who's a reverend and a veteran of the U.S. Institute of Peace. They're bringing us a series about the global view of religious nationalism and what we can learn from those who have fought it. So we all know, a lot of us here have done a lot of reading and listening about the history of Christian nationalism and fascism and bad stuff. We need tools. We need perspective. We need skills. They're going to bring us interviews with folks who know how folks have fought back against Christian nationalists, Hindu nationalists, authoritarians in Russia, in India, in Brazil, in a global way. And I'm really excited for people to hear that, because I think it's going to make a difference in how we think of ourselves. They say that, look, America is unique, but it's not exceptional.
Right.
And what we can learn from others who have fought this fight is large, and we should do. The other is a podcast from Soul Force and Reverend Alba Onofrio, who sometimes goes by Reverend Sex. And that is a podcast for people. It's an invitation to a table that is queer, feminist, Latine, and 100% about faith. A lot of times you have conversations about faith that exclude folks who are queer, feminist, or Latin. You might have folks talking about lefty politics and Latinx politics, queer identity, but they often leave out religion. Well, Reverend Alba and her crew bring all of those together. And if that's you, you should expect that from us in early October. So I'm excited for those people to tell you more come October, because I think both those podcasts are going to be really helpful for the current moment.
Oh my gosh, those are great. I cannot wait.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Well, Brad, like I said, it's always a pleasure to have you on Good Faith Weekly. We always learn something, and I know our guests appreciate your wisdom on these things and insights. So thanks for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
And to our audience, we want to thank you for joining us again. And until next week, keep living good faith. You've been listening to Good Faith Weekly, hosted by Mitch and Missy Randall. This weekly podcast from Good Faith Media discusses matters of faith and culture. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and give us a like and a glowing review. We produce the podcast out of Norman, Oklahoma. Our music comes from Pond 5. And we're supported by listeners like you. Learn more about us at goodfaithmedia.org.